How a Poor Boy Created Rolex. Imagine a boy, barely 12 years old, standing alone in the foggy streets of Germany. No parents, no wealth, no guidance. Just a child staring at a world that seemed cold and unwelcoming. That boy was Hans Wilsdorf, and in just a few decades, he would build one of the most prestigious and luxurious watch brands in history, Rolex. But this story isn't just about a company. It's about ambition born from hardship, dreams forged through discipline, and a young man who refused to let fate define him. This is the story of how a poor orphan became the king of time. Early life of Hans Wilsdorf. Hans Wilsdorf was born on March 22, 1881, in Kulmbach, a small town in Bavaria, Germany. His family lived modestly, running a hardware business, but Hans's childhood would be anything but secure. Tragedy struck when he was only 12 years old. Both of his parents passed away, leaving Hans and his siblings orphans. They were sent to live with relatives who sold the family business and placed the children in boarding schools. Life was strict, disciplined, and lonely. Yet Hans showed remarkable determination. He excelled in languages, German, French, English, skills that would one day help him build a global empire. More importantly, Hans developed resilience. Losing his parents so young taught him to rely on himself. It gave him a drive to create something lasting, something no tragedy could take away. First steps into the watch world. As a teenager, Hans left Germany to seek work. He landed a job with a pearl exporting company in Le Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland, a place famous for watchmaking. There, Hans learned about international trade, quality control, and customer service. But the real turning point came when he joined a Swiss watch exporting firm. He was surrounded by timepieces, pocket watches, tiny mechanisms, precision tools. Hans became fascinated by how something so small could be so complex, so precise. At the time, pocket watches were king. Wristwatches existed, but were seen as fragile, even feminine. Most men laughed at the idea of wearing a watch on their wrist, but Hans saw the future differently. He believed wristwatches could be practical, accurate, and stylish. It was a radical thought, one that would change his life. The move to London and birth of Rolex. In 1905, at just 25 years old, Hans Wilsdorf moved to London, then the center of world trade. With his brother-in-law, Alfred Davis, they founded a small company called Wilsdorf and Davis. Their goal was simple but ambitious: create elegant, reliable wristwatches for men. At first, they imported Swiss movements and placed them in English watch cases. Business grew steadily, but Hans wanted more than just assembling watches. He wanted to create a brand. In 1908, after testing hundreds of names, he chose one: Rolex. Short, crisp, easy to pronounce in any language, and symmetrical on a watch face. Some say the name mimicked the sound of a watch being wound. Others say Hans simply liked the way it looked and sounded. Whatever the reason, Rolex was born. Innovation and precision. From the start, Rolex stood for quality. Hans pushed for precision like no one else. In 1910, a Rolex became the first wristwatch in the world to receive the Swiss Certificate of Chronometric Precision. 4 years later, Rolex received the prestigious Class A certificate from the Kew Observatory in England, the same standard given to marine chronometers used by ships. This was a turning point. Rolex wasn't just a wristwatch, it was a symbol of accuracy and reliability. Then, in 1926, Rolex unveiled the Oyster case, the world's first waterproof wristwatch. Advertisements showed it submerged in water for hours, still ticking perfectly. To prove its durability, Rolex equipped Mercedes Gleitz, a young British swimmer, with an oyster when she swam across the English Channel in 1927. When she finished her grueling swim, the watch was still running flawlessly. The world was amazed. Rolex had done the impossible. The expansion years. The success of the Oyster propelled Rolex into the spotlight, but Hans Wilsdorf wasn't done. He understood that to dominate the market, Rolex had to be more than just accurate and durable. It had to represent aspiration. In the 1930s, Rolex watches accompanied explorers on daring adventures, deep-sea dives, high-altitude climbs, and record-breaking flights. Each journey proved the watches could withstand extremes of nature. Rolex wasn't just keeping time, it was keeping history. When Sir Malcolm Campbell broke the world land speed record in 1935, he was wearing a Rolex. When explorers climbed the highest peaks or descended into the deepest oceans, Rolex was on their wrists. These feats weren't accidents. Hans Wilsdorf deliberately linked Rolex to achievement, courage, and prestige. Every success story turned Rolex into more than a timepiece. It became a symbol of human ambition. The Rolex crown, a symbol of prestige. By the mid-40th century, Rolex introduced its iconic crown logo and the famous slogan, "A crown for every achievement." It was a masterstroke of branding. The crown symbolized not just royalty, but also victory and excellence. Owning a Rolex wasn't about telling time, it was about celebrating success. The company introduced iconic models like the Datejust in 1945, the first wristwatch with an automatically changing date on the dial, and the Submariner in 1953, designed for deep-sea divers and adventurers. Each model blended functionality with elegance, making Rolex the ultimate status symbol. Overcoming challenges. But success didn't come without obstacles. World War I forced Rolex to move its headquarters from London to Geneva, Switzerland, to avoid heavy taxes and instability. It was a bold move, but it positioned Rolex at the heart of Swiss watchmaking, a place synonymous with precision and luxury. Despite wars, economic depressions, and changing fashions, Rolex thrived. Why? Because Hans Wilsdorf never compromised on quality. He believed a Rolex must last a lifetime, if not generations.